Perfect Podcast, episode 168. Lamar, we have a very special guest with us today, sir.
We have Richard Greenwood Jr., a director who is directing a new film coming out on digital and on demand March 10th. It's called This Land. Sir, thank you for coming on the show with us. How are you doing today?
Thank you very much for having me. I'm doing all right. I appreciate you guys giving me a ring and having me come on. Definitely much appreciated. You guys can call me Rick, by the way. I kind of did the whole name, the big name thing for the whole movie thing, but yeah, I usually go by Rick. So
Cool.
You're already a humble man. We like you already. So just to start off, before we get into the movie and everything like that, what brought you into film? Because everybody has a different story. What brought you to film your personal journey?
Oh, that's an interesting question. For me, it was. I mean, I've always loved movies and stuff. But I'm from an art background, really, mostly. So I did drawing, painting, sculpting, multiple mediums, and then music and stuff. So to me, like movies kind of seemed like the next step. It was kind of like just because I mean, movies really ultimately is everything. It's all the arts kind of like put, gathered into one, you know, cohesive expression. So it's like you really kind of need to have visuals and but writing and poetry, I guess, and music and rhythm and everything just kind of it all just kind of is the culmination of all of that. So I did my undergrad was art and it was when I was kind of reaching my final years of my bachelor's, I started kind of experimenting in like video art kind of stuff. So doing weird kind of, things that would kind of freak people out. So, it's definitely some experimental kind of stuff.
So what about like your influences? Like, do you find that you have some influences like artists that influence your filmmaking or musicians that influence your filmmaking in particular or your general influences or whatever?
I think overall, I mean, everything kind of there's influence in everything, right? I mean, whether it be art or music and kind of just movies in general, what I mean? I think we all kind of gravitate towards what we know, right? So, I mean, again, like I always wanted to do music videos and stuff too, because I love that expression of that, but that's kind of changed a little bit. What I
Mm-hmm.
mean? I love like the more like thriller and stuff like that with the more the really kind of experimental and more narrative kind of music videos
Right.
versus the performance kind of stuff. So I was kind of like love that and just the different techniques and stuff you can bring in there. And again, art, I mean, I'm not as versed on the newer artists as I probably should be, but I mean, I love like obviously H.R. Geiger, Dolly, and let me see, is it Boris Vallejo? I don't know if you know them.
Yeah,
Ring a
the
bell?
he makes all
Yeah,
the covers, all the
yeah,
classic movie covers.
yeah. He did
Yes.
some of them and stuff. Yeah, so for sure. And of course, I'm a big Renaissance fan, so I like to a lot of Renaissance and Gothic and High Gothic and stuff like that.
Okay.
So yeah, so I mean, anything I can kind of bring in, just in terms of like the aesthetics, and of course, as far as movies go, I mean, I like everything. As far as horror, I'm more of a classic horror than modern, personally. But again, it's just interesting to see kind of different takes on stuff. I love, action is great and stuff. I like fantasy too, so I mean, I don't know if you see my Game of Thrones poster up there. So, I definitely, wherever I can draw inspiration from, I'm definitely down for it.
Now you mentioned horror, and you're saying you like some of the older stuff. Now, is it like more of like the 70s, 80s where it was the slasher stuff? Because I feel like, and maybe this is like a whole thing with like, the industry, it's more gore fest. Like, is it more so like the old school stuff, like, where it was the slasher and that kind of like just typical movie and stuff like that?
I mean, I do like that stuff. However, for me personally, I prefer more more the grounded stuff. I mean, like, I mean, Nightmare on Elm Street, Exorcist, Hellraiser, People Under the Stairs, Prince of Darkness, stuff like that. I mean, I don't know. I like stuff that's a little more character driven personally.
Hmm.
I'm not really into like the torture porn and stuff like that. I mean, I do like Hostel and Saw and stuff. But but it's like, again, I think it's, to me, I have a limited threshold on that, where it's like, I love that stuff just as long as it has substance to it, think like Exorcist, right? You know what I mean? It's, they really make you connect with Reagan first, and then she goes, then all that stuff happens, so it's like, it really kind of, I mean, I like more character driven stuff and stuff that kind of really, takes you on a ride versus necessarily just trying to gross you out, But when you do go gross, you gotta have fun with it.
Well, speaking of
Yes.
horror, you have a new horror movie, This Land,
Yes,
which
sir.
combines a lot of different things. It's like a political
Yes.
movie. There's like I guess a sacrifice, almost like a cult in the movie, sacrificing. Um, what was the inspiration for this movie? What made it come together?
Um, my buddy Colin, who co-wrote it with his friend Leon, he came to me probably 2 years before we shot it with the script, and said he wanted to kind of do something, wanted to get it something produced, because I mean, we spent a very long time trying to get something done, and it's very hard to get money, and it's very hard to get backers and things, and he kind of was just like, what, I'm fed up, I want to do something, and he put his money where his mouth was, and he funded the whole thing.
Oh
So
wow.
so we went off of this script because I thought it was one that was kind of doable, but it was also very interesting because it wasn't your typical kind of, just straight up, like I said, slasher or something like that. It was kind of, we're trying to, his whole thing was, he wanted to elevate it to something that had a little more to it, right? But originally, even the early versions of the script, were, it still had that kind of red state, blue state thing, the politically charged kind of aspect to it, which I liked. I mean, that was, to me, one of the biggest things, and it was, it was a little more culty in the first iterations, and we kind of, we spent like, I mean, he and Leon spent about another year working on it, and then we started decided we were going to go into, development on it, and then we spent almost another year just working on the script, just kind of like fine tuning things, and kind of just kind of making sure the characters were good, and the situation and stuff. So for me, it was really kind of the thing that I really liked about it was, again, the red state blue state thing, but it was also more about, kind of like presenting that issue, but also kind of showing that it's kind of a non-issue, or that it shouldn't be an issue, essentially, that, instead of focusing on differences and kind of like, perceived kind of differences, or, politics and whatever, that we should focus on the commonalities and the things that make us human, and to make us, you know, more together, you know what I mean,
Hmm.
and come together, so in this situation, having that cult that you're talking about in there was kind of representational of essentially kind of modern society, where it's like, the individuals on the top that are kind of pulling the strings,
Hmm.
so it was like them kind of like having to stop with their bickering and their little differences to really overcome the true adversary, which is the one pulling the strings. So and that's, to me, like one of the best things about it was that it really had that underlying kind of like message to it, wrapped in a package of a home invasion and that kind of stuff. So but yeah, we took a long time trying to make sure the script was good, and before going into production. So, but it was a decently lengthy process.
Well, I mean, yeah, like, when you're talking about like this, your partner, like, funded it and everything like that. And so you guys are, I won't say going rogue, but you're going at it alone. Like, how hard is that? Because, of course, with the movies that we see, if it's not like a superhero movie, or if it's not like a remake, if you're doing something original, you're going to have to probably be doing it on your own. How hard was it to get everything done for this movie?
For sure. I mean, that's a great point. Actually, I was talking to somebody about that the other day too. Again, well, I talk about it all the time. Again, I'm not a big fan of the reboots and the remakes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's just like, come on, there's new stuff out there. Let's explore it. You know what I mean? Even continentally, like, look around the world. I mean, there's got to be different stories we can bring to the table. Why we just keep rehashing the same old crap and just changing things just to change it doesn't make sense to me. But I guess to get back at your point, obviously it is tough, what I mean, because it all comes down to money, you know what I mean? And that's the thing, like if you can't find investors, you can't find people to back you or whatever, then it's, you just sit there idle and you're waiting for things to happen. If you do like what Colin did and took it into his own hands and just was just like, no, I'll put it up, you know what I mean? Like that's ballsy, you know what I mean? Because, there's not a lot of, there's really no expectations. There's no guarantees for anything in terms of making your money back or any of that. And like you said, when you're competing against, big stuff, I mean, you're going to get pushed to the side, so how do you break through the noise, you know what I mean? Because I mean, that's where kind of we're at nowadays is like there's so much content out there and it's more quantity over quality, I feel, you know what I mean?
Yes.
It's like,
Yeah.
so how do you break through that? And again, I think that's one of the reasons why we spent so much time with the script and stuff to try to make sure it was unique or that we had something different to offer and hope that it breaks through that noise. But I mean, ultimately, in terms of like the actual production, it's just assembling the right people. Making sure that you have people that are in it for the long haul or are gonna put in that work. Especially when you're not being able to pay top dollar, or you're not being able to even pay, sometimes it's even less than what they would normally do, so it was, I guess the thing was is with us trying to take advantage of working during the pandemic, because there wasn't a lot of work,
Oh wow.
that
Yeah.
worked towards our advantage a little bit too, because again, we weren't able to pay high rates and we weren't able to do a lot of things like that. And ultimately, the end of the day, the way I always look at it is whatever money you have should show up on the screen.
Mhm.
I mean, whenever you're wasting, if you're spending money on something, but it's not adding anything to the actual product that we're seeing on the screen, then it's a waste, so how do you milk every cent, so that was a big challenge. But again, I think, like I said, I think it just comes down to making sure you surround yourself with the right people that are willing to do it. And of course, end of the day, you also have to take on a lot more responsibilities yourself, you know what I mean? So I don't know if you looked at the credits and stuff, but I've unfortunately had to do a lot of stuff on the film. I took over the editing and, I ended up doing sound design and a lot of other stuff. So it's like, so my hands are all over it. I bled all over this thing. So, but that's what you have to do in order, when you don't have somebody backing you with a lot of money, you really have
Yeah.
to give it up to it, so I mean this has been probably about 2 years of work for me. So
Mm.
and Colin and Anthony are the producer, so it's been a lot, but hopefully hopefully it's worth it in the end. I mean, it's already worth it. We have something out there that we're proud of that hopefully we can grow on.
Yeah.
It's a stepping stone.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like you said, I think people are looking for more stuff because in the last few months we've reviewed like Terrifier 2 and the Winnie the
Yes.
Pooh movie. It's like independent horror movies are doing really well right now. So this is seems like a great time for you guys, you know?
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I know we're not your typical horror, I
Yeah.
mean, we're a little more, I guess I would say we're kind of more thriller than horror, but again, there's, that audience is a big audience and, they're ravenous, so,
Mm-hmm.
so hopefully, again, hopefully you can strike a chord with them and, we're not expecting to be the next Avatar, but at the same time, I mean, hopefully people will like it, enjoy it. So.
And going back to you're saying, the petty differences and everything like that, not to get too political. And of course, that's the inspiration of the film. So are you really, when people see this film, both sides of the aisle, you hope that, they can see that we're kind of like, I don't want to sound new agey, but like a melting pot and everything like that. Like we're all just, even if someone is conservative or liberal, it doesn't mean I'm your enemy, basically. Yeah.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point because that was one of the big things that was very important going into it, was making sure that we weren't necessarily picking a side. You know what I mean?
Right.
We didn't want it to seem like we were biased to one thing, and it would definitely, and that's kind of what I liked about the script and kind of things we were molding. It was that depending on which side you are, it should be an honest interpretation of either side, but at the same time, it's not like I'm my personal opinions, my personal biases aren't being influenced in there in terms of like, oh, this is the right side or this is the right side. It's more about just kind of showing them, and then, but to me, the bigger thing is where are they the same? Where are we the same? Where can we come together? Like you said, the melting pot. So it's a fine line. I think you have to kind of teeter on there. Is that you're without trying to basically again push in a bias or anything on one side or another, because I think if you do, then you alienate parts of the audience, right? You know what I mean? And then I mean, clearly we're following Ava and her family because I mean Ava is our journey, you know what I mean? So it is kind of a little biased to that, but at the same time we're trying to kind of again try to find that balance in there. So but I think you're right. It's a very good point.
Yeah. Now let me ask you this, because this is really important. You mentioned like having to make the movie with a little bit of budget and resource. Now I believe you've also been a teacher of film at some point, cinematography.
Yeah, I teach cinematography and directing
Oh,
actually.
right on. This is perfect. We review a lot of B movies on this podcast, or that's pretty much all we do. What are some tips for people
Yo,
that
boy.
don't have the resources, they don't have the big budget? How do they go about it? What are just some tips for that? Because we have people that need a lot of help.
They mean well. Let's just say that they mean well, but it's just kind of like we see what you were doing, but it was kind of like you need a little tweaking in some places. So
For
yeah.
sure, for sure. I mean, I always tell my students, you know what I mean, and even watching, like you said, a lot of the B horror stuff. It's like
Mhm.
sometimes you find some gems and they're great, and other times you're just like, wow, I just wasted 2 hours or whatever, So it is hit or miss, and that also makes it really tough for people to kind of really put faith into going after those kinds of movies because it is so random. But I mean, I honestly, I always tell my students, even with their thesis films and their shorts and stuff, to me, it's all about the script. You know what I mean?
Mm.
It's all about the script, and it's all about and it's make you don't people I think rush into things with like a concept and then they don't flush the script out enough. It's like if the story doesn't make sense and if the story's not solid, it doesn't matter how great your cinematography is. It doesn't matter how great the gore is. It doesn't matter. None of that stuff matters if the story isn't good and the characters aren't good. To me, that's
Mhm.
again, that's just my personal opinion. But and of course, casting is a huge part of it. You got to make sure you have the right person for the job. I mean, a lot of us will say that good directing, 80% of good directing is good casting. You get the right person and you're just molding performance. You're not creating something out of nothing, which is harder to do, right? It takes a lot more skill to kind of create, mold, build something from the foundation than it is to kind of like, you know, refine it, so yeah, I guess my big suggestion is, is always just make sure the script is good. If it takes a little longer to get to production, so be it. You're going to be better in a better place. Make sure the script is good, good casting, and then like I kind of said before, is every penny you spend should show up on the screen. Put your money towards the things that matter. In terms of like production design and wardrobe and stuff like that. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter what camera you're shooting on. If you're shooting against a bunch of white walls and
Mm.
the space doesn't look good, it does. It's all that stuff that's there helps tell the story, helps put you into place, helps ground it, right? So I mean, so I think it's kind of like you really kind of just all of those things kind of just and it's management, right? So yeah, I mean, that would be kind of my big advice, right? And it's, also write what you know, or, you bring in what you can personally into something. Same thing like you're trying to go low budget. I think with ours, we broke every rule. You're supposed to do an indie stuff. You know what I mean? Like, because literally like we had a big cast, we ended up having multiple locations playing as one, which kind of added to it.
Hmm.
You got stunts, you got special effects, you know what I mean? So when you're trying to go very low budget, those are all hard things to do. So again, I mean, we kind of broke the rules a little bit, but it is what it is. But ultimately, yeah, write what you can and write what you can produce. I guess that would I know it's a
No.
long-winded answer, but
No,
No.
kind of where I would say.
No, that's perfect because we do see a lot of that. Like, we see a lot of great concepts, but then
Right.
when we actually
Yes.
watch the movie, we're like, what happened?
Yeah, again, I think that comes down to the script, right? So
Yeah.
more than anything, I mean, sometimes it's execution, but I think a lot of times, nowadays, I think people are definitely more well versed nowadays, are more capable of making things technically, but it comes back down to the storytelling, right? So I've definitely seen my fair share of those too. I remember seeing this one, I can't remember the name of it. It was like this group of kids that were basically put in this like bunker or something. It was like they were with a teacher, and it basically was like a theoretical situation, like if the doomsday thing came along, who were they going to kill or whatever to survive and stuff. It was actually a really interesting concept, and I actually really thought the concept was great, but the execution again was just like it was just it was all over the place because they just didn't really bring it home and bring it together. So that's also, I guess that's another note you could say too. Again, is sometimes, especially when you're talking lower budget, keep it simple. Sometimes
Yeah.
too, because I think if you're trying to, if you're trying to make the Matrix for $100,000, good luck.
very true. Yes.
So,
Yeah.
so.
Now, what is next for you as a filmmaker? What are your next plans, if you have any? Is it going to be more cinematography? Do you have a film ready to direct? What are the next steps for you?
Good question. I have a bunch of projects that I have lined, kind of like out there, hopefully, again, searching for money. I have one that I've been trying for a couple of years now to try to get going, and hopefully that one will finally go. It's that one's a fun one. It's called The Grid. It's basically kind of it's about these group of survivors that go underground. To seek refuge from an alien outbreak on the planet, and then they survive a couple years, and then they get in, and now they have to flee back to the surface to get away from them. So it's a pretty fun gore. It's a little gore fest, but it's definitely a fun one. And I have a couple other ones. Colin and I have some things that we're working on too. So there's always some things out there as far as like actual projects lined up. I have a couple features that I'm in line to DP as far as cinematographer, but and some shows. So we'll see. That's the thing. Like nowadays, like I don't count anything until the check is written. So because things are always kind of coming and going. But I definitely want to. As much as I can get. In the meantime, I'm still teaching and doing that, and I'd like to get more into my music too, but hey.
Nice.
So,
So this land is out March 10th all over the place. Is there specifics on what platforms it's going to be on?
unfortunately, they have not shared with
No.
us what those platforms are yet,
Okay.
which obviously would be helpful if I could tell you. So, but unfortunately, they have not told us that yet. I don't know if they're just still negotiating those or
Right.
whatever. So,
Okay.
but yeah, it's supposed to be, all digital platforms. I know there was mention of like iTunes and Google Play and stuff like that. So hopefully, so pretty much, wherever they can get it, I'm sure they're going to try to get it up on there. So, from what I gather, we're going the VOD route first, and
Okay.
then it'll go to like AVOD and SVOD and stuff like that afterwards. So,
Okay.
but yeah,
Cool.
no, and we're doing in conjunction with the One Fright Film Festival. We're doing a red carpet premiere of the film in Los Angeles
Oh, cool.
on March
Nice.
14th as well. So the one and only chance to see it on the big screen. So we've been promoting that as well. So that should be pretty fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, either way, March 10th, everybody, we do encourage everyone to just search for it. You'll find it eventually.
Google
Yeah.
is your friend, basically. That's what they say all the time and everything like that. So how can people reach you? Like all the social medias, all that stuff, sir?
Well, we just started a new Instagram page for the film. It's called This Land _ film, and then I'm at Rick Nino Films, RICKNINO Films, and then and I guess I have a Twitter with that too, but I don't really do Twitter, but and of course same thing. You can find me on Facebook with that too, Rick Greenwood Jr. So and yeah, and Terror Films is distributing it, so they're going to have info on it as well. So I believe their IG is just at Terror Films.
Yep.
So so
We
for
get a
sure.
lot of terror films.
Oh God,
Yes.
We're good with terror
the
films.
influx.
Influx,
Right.
yes, for sure.
Yes.
And I saw you guys. I saw you guys were liking some of our posts recently, so I appreciate that and
Yep, for sure.
sharing them. Thank you very much. Appreciate
Yeah.
definitely appreciate getting that out there.
Yeah, man,
So-
anytime.
So
sure.
and what were your guys' thoughts on the film? What did you guys think?
Yeah, man, I was enjoying. I like the element of the cult, like adding that extra bit in there, like throwing that in there. 'Cause I like cult movies like that, like stuff like that, like the throwbacks from back in the day, and like they don't do that too much anymore. I know Midsummer, but
Right.
I don't like that one.
Joe,
But like you
yeah.
said, showing that people perceive everyone as they're different, or I don't agree with this guy, so he's my enemy. And it's like when you're thrust in that situation and you have to work together, that was great, part of it. So
Well, I'm going to be seeing it soon because I wanted to go and know something about it when we did our, interview. So, but Joe had to jump the gun. But I will be seeing it very soon. Because I sent it to him. I was like, "This is an interesting poster." And then you watch the trailer, you're like, "Oh, okay, okay." So it's like, because the way I looked at it, it was kind of like you added in, of course, like thriller stuff, but then there's parts of like the Purge, and then they're all in one house and everything like that. So it's interesting. I think it will be interesting to see all those things come together and how because I thought it was going to be everybody like against each other, but then it's like, no, it's an outside thing. So now they have to depend on each other. So that's
Right.
what I'm waiting to see and everything. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'll definitely once you get to see it, feel free to hit me up and let me know your thoughts because I definitely like to hear what people have to say about stuff. So for sure.
Right on.
So
Well, thank you, man. Once again, March 10th, This Land, everybody. Check it out. And we thank Rick for joining us today, sir.
thank you very much
We'll
for
see
having
ya.
me. It was fun.
Yeah.
Thank you
Peace.
guys.
Deuces, thank you so much.
Thank you guys.